Our objectives, basic understanding of the brain. I think it's important that when we're working with districts and teachers, we just have to have a little bit of knowledge about what a brain that has depression looks like, what a brain that has anxiety or trauma internally looks like it, because you're seeing a lot of behaviors, but you don't necessarily understand where they're coming from. And then hopefully you're going to learn multiple universal mental health strategies. And I'm going to go from a global lens to a specific lens because I don't have a lot of time. And then I'm going to give you access to Universal Teaching Strategies alignment document that I helped create for the McDowell Institute. It is specifically for PA Career Ready Skills and all the universal teachings that are on the CASEL and the PA PDE network. And on the right are all the principles for trauma-informed care. And they've got links and resources for teachers for using resources in the classroom to coincide with PA Career Ready Skills. During this, okay, so first, I'm not a neuroscientist here, so I'm just going to give you a basic overview. This is, and some of you may know this already, so forgive me if I am being redundant. This is the executive functioning brain. So this is your learning brain. So when kids come into class, if they are not here, they are not ready to learn. So we need to intervene doing something to help their brains get up here. A brain break is something that you can do, and we're going to do another one a little later, to get kids focused. Let's say they just came back from lunch and they're all over the place. Their blood sugar's going sky high and a lot of drama happens. So you can pull them back simply by doing a brain break. When you deal with depression, you're looking at all this gray matter and there's not a lot of it lit up. If you look at PET scans of brains that are depressed and a brain that isn't, it is amazing. How do you teach kids when there's no brain activity going? So you can do certain techniques that will help light up their brain and get them ready to learn. In here is your emotions, your limbic system, and your executive functioning controls your limbic system. And then back here is trauma, anxiety, that fight, flight, freeze that we always talk about. And what happens is most of our kids who are dealing with depression and trauma, anxiety, bipolar disorder, they live back here and we need them here in their frontal lobe. So that's just a quick, so the goal is what strategies do we do to get them there? There's a different way to look at behavior, and there's a whole new set of possibilities that we can use to strengthen resilience. And especially with kids with mental health disorders. I would also say, even if you don't have a mental health disorder, I think these are great techniques for any youth to learn. And what's really nice is as you're teaching these to children, you're learning them yourself, and it is a great way of self-care. And I used to have a diffuser, my meditation music on before they would come in, and then we'd dance and get up. It would take a couple seconds, but I could get them focused very quickly and keep teaching their brains how to calm down, how to calm down, how to calm down. And when you think about an educator, when you're teaching a lesson, you have to teach, you have to reteach, you have to reteach, and then maybe come back to it and teach it in a different way. So an example that I want to give is, a lot of times I see the word respect, and I wish that we never used that word, but that's just my silly little wish, because respect means very different things in different cultures. And if somebody is physically aggressive in one culture, that might be respectful. So when we do our matrices, I almost always see respect and safety and trustworthiness, and they really mean different things to different people. So I don't want you to all think you need to go back and change all your PBIS, the fabulous work you've done, but I'm going to give you a way to maybe reframe it at the end of this. So before I get into the global pieces, what does your data suggest? We all know data, teaming, systems. What's happening all of you coaches, when you're looking at the PBIS data, where are you seeing the need? Is it in disruption of the educational process? Is it disrespect? Is it verbal, physical aggression? I remember always seeing a lot of classroom. That to me, I think was one of the biggest ones when I was working in several schools. I would see a lot of, which makes sense, makes perfect sense. And then you want to look at your SAP data. What are you seeing? What are kids being referred for? Is it any of these? And what do we want to target? So today, I'm just going to try to look at a small piece. And since we're dealing with a lot of trauma, which leads to depression, anxiety, I wanted to look at the disruption of educational process and trauma. And I'm going to start with the teacher approach and input. So teachers need, these are skills that we need to teach students. So I'm going to go on a global scale. Just like we say, you know, when kids come in and they're the kid that's always the troubled kid, and we all go, oh, I wish they had other parents. They would just thrive. So we always want to fix the child, but I think that we as adults have to teach first and learn maybe different approaches. And is everybody going to agree with this? No, absolutely not. And are we human? Yeah, we lose our cool. But hopefully I'll talk to you about reframing that. And then we're going to transfer those skills to the student. So here are some of the mental health disorders we're looking at. And here are the global skills. You guys know these. They're social emotional learning. One of the best things you could do for mental health is to have a evidence-based social emotional learning curriculum. But not everybody has the money, time, effort to do that. But there are some things that you can do in each of those domains, and I am going to give you a little snippet. So first off, before the students even come in, if you want to make your room more conducive for individuals with depression, anxiety, and trauma, you want to do a physical scan of your room and an emotional scan. And I always find the occupational therapist and make them my best friend because they are so untapped, their resources. They have so many things for ADHD, for trauma, a few of which we're going to touch on. And this may be a little awkward. I'm going to share some of these links for you, and hopefully I can get them and you can see them. Okay, Becky, I can see you. Can you see my screen has changed? Okay, so let me show you what it looks like. Here's a flexible room. You've got flexible seating. You've got a chair that rocks. You've got this piece over here. You've got just regular typical seats. There's not a lot on the board. This is, to me, an organized classroom. When I look at this, I personally don't get overwhelmed. And of course, everybody's going to react to it differently. To me, on a younger level, this is a beautiful classroom. This setup, I think, is brilliant because you have, these seats are probably ones that wobble. So if you're looking at students who are seeking sensory behavior or stimuli, the ones that are talking, the ones that are yelling, fidgeting, if you put them on these different types of seats that your OT can help you with, that's going to give them the stimuli to help their brains either calm down or focus. So I think, can every room be doing this? No, but to the best of our abilities, what happens, what I saw, I would see them get some of these seats and they would have the kids earn the seats. These seats are not to be earned. They are specifically for youth who need that sensory input so they can focus on learning. So, and the OT can really help you with that. This class has very flexible seating, but honestly, if I walked into this class, and I don't mean any judgment whatsoever at all, I'm not a teacher, I'm a licensed social worker, I would be overwhelmed. I wouldn't know where to look. I wouldn't know exactly where to sit. I would walk in not feeling safe. So those are just a couple of snippets of what an organized, flexible seating. And then there was one with some sensory overload. So when you get this, you can go in and click on these links. And these are also in the huge alignment document that I have. Not everybody, and there are ways to do it for, let me see if I can find a high school example. Oh, wait a minute, hold on. Well, let me get back to, all right. Okay, close this. So let me see if I can find something that would look more like a high school classroom. Okay, that might not, you might have to go through a few. Okay, so this could be a high school classroom. It has different levels of seating. Again, you see it's very organized. So I think a lot of people go, well, that's really easy to do with the younger kids, but we can't really do that in our high school classes. I think you absolutely can. I think you have to always look outside of the box. And that's, to me, the most difficult thing is looking outside of the box. All right, let me try to get rid of this and get back to, all right, I have to stop share. There are a lot of links, so this can be a little wonky, and I do apologize for that. Okay, here we are. So then we can go to 5 tips for sensory-friendly classroom. And this talks about some of the things that I've already talked about. It has brain breaks and other suggestions. And then on the right side, we have an emotional scan. So I would, if I had my wish, I would post positive affirmations, 1 or 2, or gratitude statements that help students reframe their thoughts when you're dealing with trauma, depression, anxiety. We're going to talk about thought traps. And using these affirmations and gratitude statements, instead of doing it through therapy, you can simply do it by having certain things posted. And you can start doing them 1 or 2 on the board. And then when your class comes in at the beginning of the year, you can ask what other things they can add. What are your positive affirmations? What are gratitude statements? When do we use them? How do we use them? Maybe we start the day with a meditation, a brain break, and a gratitude statement. Every day you keep retraining your brain and reframing the connections within your brain by doing some of these pieces. So you could post norms and values. I know people already do predictable routines. A trigger warning. This is huge. I think when you are dealing with trauma, mental health, sometimes a student is disrupting the class and you want them to respond like that. Their brains are not going to respond like that. And I think that we need to explain to teachers that, or educators or administrators or any of the adults, that sometimes there's a processing delay here. My brain is depressed, it's not functioning. So what I'm processing for you, I cannot respond to you in the way you want me to respond, in the time you want me to respond. So I would always have a little trigger warning. If something were going to change, I would do it as soon as possible. Sometimes the change is instant and there's nothing you can do about it. But I would have a little trigger warning of, hey, I want you to be thinking about this. I'm not going to be here tomorrow, etc. And then establishing traditions and celebrations. How are we going to build a class community, including those kids who have been traumatized that don't want to build a community? They will stay away from connection. So we're going to try to build a safe connection by doing the physical scan, by doing an emotional scan. So when students walk into our classrooms, they immediately feel safe. And I can't see everybody, so if you have a question, you want to raise your hand, just unmute and yell out. So I want you to see this approach by Heather Forbes. I would show in all the trainings I've done, I always use her because here's what doesn't work and here's what does work with mental health. So I am going to hopefully get this to share with you. Heather Forbes is incredible when it comes to trauma. And unfortunately, you have to see the ads before.
Drinking ice water flushes 1 pound of belly fat every day.
That is not
People are
strategy.
flushing away pound after.
This program contains video dramatizations of scenarios encountered by real trauma-informed counselors. They will demonstrate both an unproductive version of a classroom scenario and the same scenario done productively right after, both with commentary.
Isaiah, hello? Take the hoodie off. Hoodie off now. Where are you going? No, where are you going? No, you're back here right now.
So listen, just take a few minutes, okay? Take some deep breaths. Let me know if you need anything, okay?
When the teacher realizes the student has not followed her directive to take off the hoodie, this time she understands that the student must be overwhelmed and dysregulated. She quietly comes over to him, squats down to his level, and verbally connects with him by acknowledging that he is having a hard day.
Okay. I love that clip because when you are working with mental health, if you approach the student the second way that she did, it's not always going to work, but 99% of the time, you're going to help that child get to their learning brain. And yelling, and this happens, I mean, I see a lot of yelling, and people are human. So if a teacher is unable to recognize that the student's overwhelmed and they do the first approach, you could actually, if you were willing to be transparent, say, you know what, sorry, I am so sorry. That was my bad here. I need to regulate. And I'm gonna show you what I do to emotionally regulate. And I want you all to help me regulate so that I don't lose my cool again. And you could take it as a teachable moment. So I don't expect every teacher, it's their classroom and they get to do what they want to do. But when you talk about approaching students, the last thing you want to do is shame them in front of their peers, was the biggest complaint that I got. So, and some of this is like, oh, well, I already do that. Fabulous. It doesn't mean that you're not going to write the student up. It doesn't mean that you're not going to hold them accountable. It just means in that moment, you're going to approach them in the second way that she did it. There is a restorative response chart here that offers and explains the difference than saying, listen, your behavior's awful, get out of my class, to a restorative response. And I think if we reframed it and worked with adults on, okay, how do we use language when we're dealing with behaviors? And this chart, it's you may have already seen the CASEL resource that it comes from. You're going to have it at the end. I don't want to take all your time and go through that. I just want to give you the resources as much as I can within an hour. So helping students regulate is the biggest thing I can think of when there's trauma, whether external or internal. And what you saw Heather Forbes do is approach them listening. I'm going to listen for understanding, and I'm going to connect, asking clarifying questions. Is there anything I can do? I see, and then I'm going to validate. What happens is we give a directive first. So if somebody gets disrupting the class and gets in your face and starts saying angry things to you, our immediate reaction is, you're going to be written up. You need to sit down. You need to do this. What happens if we just listened for a few moments, as long as everything's safe and it doesn't get out of control? Why don't we just listen? And and ask the other students, is anybody else feeling that way? We're going to connect them. And then we're going to say, yeah, I can imagine you're angry. We're going to validate them, even if their behavior is not okay. They don't have the skill yet. They're not a bad kid. They just don't have the skill. So, and then using love-based language. I'm here with you. You have a right to be angry. You may hate my class, and that's okay. I'm doing the best I can as a teacher. And I can see that it's making you upset. And I'm sorry. I apologize for that. Again, doesn't mean you're not going to write them up or hold them accountable, but maybe we can try a different approach. I think this is great. I know, Becky, you've probably seen this ad nauseum. I think every teacher should see this, and every student. So I used to show this video to my students because it helped them understand self-awareness and being offline. So I'm going to play this for you.
So I want to talk for a minute about how to teach the brain. One of the really important things that we know in trauma is that when we help people understand the injury trauma creates in the brain and help them understand how that impacts the way they respond to other events in the world, it really helps them and their families move forward in their healing. So lots of people have given ways to teach the brain. As a practitioner myself, I've taken a lot of the models from Dr. Dan Siegel, taken models from the Hahn Foundation for teaching in the optimistic classroom, and looking at some of the things Ledoux has done, and put them together and really challenged myself and folks that I educate about practicing really teaching the brain. So when I explain this to teenagers, I start with the hand model, okay? And I start by explaining that we're going to talk about the downstairs brain and the upstairs brain that everyone has. Formally, this is called the limbic system, and this is called the cerebral cortex. But what we're going to talk is downstairs brain and upstairs brain. So in your downstairs brain, this is where fight, flight, or freeze lives, okay? When threat comes at you, your body has 3 reactions it can make. It can fight, it can run away, or it can stay very still until the danger's gone. That's what this brain does, okay? This part of the brain. What's up here, the upstairs brain, its job, among many other things, is to solve problems, to help you calm down, solve problems, okay? And to tell the downstairs brain, I got this. We're going to be okay. There's another solution. So what happens a lot of times to kids who've experienced trauma is, if you think about these like muscles, because you've gone through a lot of threat, this downstairs part of the brain's been doing push-ups your whole life, okay? So this part of the brain's really strong. The part of your brain that solves problems hasn't had as much exercise because you've had to be really strong to be a survivor, a thriver. So what happens is that the brain gets what I call emotionally hijacked. This downstairs brain comes up on top of this brain, it takes over, okay? So the downstairs brain's in control. And so you fight, you run, you freeze. The only things that work when you're down here are things that calm you down. So we call them self-regulation skills. And that happens from connection. Somebody talking to you, helping you breathe, helping you feel your body calm down. Once that happens, then the upstairs brain can come back, and then you can solve problems. So that's how I try to explain to teenagers the downstairs brain and the upstairs brain, and what happens to them when they experience a threat. With young children, what I've found is they like animals. When I say young, probably 3 to 8 years old. Sometimes teenagers like it too. And so what we call this is the downstairs brain, that threat center again, is what I call the barking dog. If you think about when any noise or threat makes, usually a dog will bark. So this is the barking dog, okay? A problem solver is often called the wise owl. So upstairs is the wise owl, downstairs is the barking dog, okay? When the dog barks, the owl flies away. And so when the dog's barking, the only things they can do are maybe practice blowing bubbles, maybe practice breathing deeply, things that help the dog start calming down. And that's where you build their self-care strategies. They practice lots of different things.
Alrighty, so I love that because I think it's a very simple way to explain to teachers what's happening. And one thing that I would have some teachers use, I would use it, is I might be doing a group or I might be in a classroom and there's a disruption of the educational process. I would simply, and I've already taught this to everybody, I would just stand there with my hand like this. I wouldn't point to anybody. I would just give a physical cue that we're offline and wait for everybody to recognize self-awareness that they're offline. And when I got everybody back, I would do this and then start with a lesson. If I couldn't get them back with this, I would go to a breathing exercise, a brain break. So what I want to do is I want to give you practice to, this is going to be a focus brain break. All right. I want you to put your right hand up or mirror me. You're going to put your thumb and your pinky out. Okay. And you're going to switch. So your thumb is in, your pinky is up. Then you're going to switch. Okay. Now you're going to bring in your other hand. You're going to start with it down. Okay. And then you're going to switch. Sorry, up. And then see, I have a hard time doing it. Pinky. So thumb, pinky, thumb, pinky. Now bring in your other hand and you're going to do it opposite. Tina. Come on, Tina. Let's watch Tina. Okay. All right. So I want you to take yourself off of mute and talk to me about that experience. What did it feel like?
You cannot think of anything else.
Yes. You cannot think of a panic attack. You cannot, my brain is old. No, Tina, you can still teach when people have strokes. They can still teach them redundancy and to talk again, to walk again. So it's you're not too old. We can teach you, Tina. So yes, I'm not thinking of the flashback. I'm not thinking of the abuse last night. I'm not thinking of the anxiety of when I go home and have to face the monster. So again, this is helping you make these connections. And if you do these, the more I couldn't do it at first. And the more, all of a sudden I could feel, yes, it's a distraction, Joseph. Yes. One of the best things you can do for any type of mental health disorder or is to distract their brain. And if somebody was starting to escalate, I would go, oh, wait. Oh my gosh, look at the color of that tree out there. I would just do something at random that meant nothing to distract their brain. But now we have things that are going to strengthen their brains. So I hope that makes sense. And Lakeside Global Institute has 101 brain breaks. It's $25 and it's the best, my favorite book in the world because it has calming brain breaks, it has focus, and it has energizing brain breaks. All right, that being said, let's get back to, let me do a new share. All right. So here is an offering. Usually when somebody has an emotional regulation plan, it is part of, it's only for tier 2 or tier 3 students on those higher tiers. Why not do a regulation plan for everybody? We should all be self-aware of what triggers us. These regulation plans are from pre-K to 12, so they're developmentally appropriate. And I don't have time to show you them all, but they're phenomenal. The Department of Education in Wisconsin did this through a huge Safe Schools, Healthy Students. They have a great website and they have the regulation plan and they teach you how to use it. And it should be a living document. This should go with a student everywhere. And when they use a new technique, they can go, hey, that brain break used to work for me. I'm going to write that in the other section of what works for me, or that 4-7-8 breathing. And as you're teaching these, they can add them to the regulation plan. And we're going, just like we introduce all different types of math, geometry, trig, literature, Shakespeare, why aren't we introducing all these regulation things like mindfulness and meditation, brain breaks? This is a great way to do a universal, everybody does a regulation plan. And part of our PBIS matrix might be, so you've decided you're going to keep the word respect. All right, good enough. But in the respect, when you teach it, part of it will say, I will use my regulation plan. So then you're going to be using those regulation plans within your PBIS matrix. I hope that makes sense. All right. Another thing that I think is important for the regulation plan is the concept of window of tolerance. And this could be used for the teacher, and this could be used for the student. So it's a brief video that I'm not going to play, but it really explains what a window of tolerance is in the roller coaster of feelings. And let's just face it, the feelings of teenagers and the hormones that are going, they're all over the place. All right. So it's a very simple way to become aware of where am I in my window of tolerance. So somebody who has a lot of tolerance, there's only a little bit of water here. So if you throw pebbles in, and I teach this to the students that I worked with, if I throw pebbles in, it's not going to bubble over and escalate. It would take a lot of me dumping in there. And this one, it'll take a few more or a few less to dump in here and go over. Our kids with the mental health disorders are here. Their cup is full. And I don't mean their bucket is full of good things. Their bucket is full of trauma and bad things and depression and flashbacks and anxiety and panic attacks. So in our self-regulation plan, we have to, how do we get from this glass down to this one and ultimately down to this one? So what is my window of tolerance, and what happens on different days when I have a different window of tolerance? What am I thinking about? What kind of gratitude statements am I saying that might be, or self-regulation skills that might get me from this glass down to that glass? I find these so hard because I don't get your feedback. So I hope you're with me. The other thing is communication. So we're going to go back to the PBIS matrix. You've got your respect. So some of the teaching pieces, I will actively use my regulation plan. I will actively use communication skills that I have been taught, which means we have to teach them. This is a wonderful, and all of these things can be taught in classes. So let me go back and think now. The glasses, you could do that in a science class. The brain, the offline, I've seen art classes take clay and mold the brain and talk about the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain and the way different things react. So they're having a tactile experience while they're learning, well, what does it mean to be offline and online? So everything that I'm giving you, I think that it can be brought into a health class. Healthy relationships could be brought into a science class. How do some science chemicals react well to each other and some that don't? What's nice about this is it is free and it is a game. So when you click on this, it actually takes you through scenarios, and then you choose, what's a healthy scenario, what isn't a healthy scenario, and why. And so they're not just going to play this game, they're going to do it, and we're going to talk about it. What makes healthy relationships? So who wouldn't want to, these kids would be on computers all day long playing games. So I think this is a great way to teach the skills. And when you have mental health challenges, very often you disconnect from people. You learn to have unhealthy relationships Or perhaps the older guardians, parents in your life have unhealthy relationships. So you've learned that. That's all you know. So why not teach the skills? And this is a resource to teach the skills. The other biggest piece to me is I statements. And we all go, oh yeah, I know what I statement is. This link is to CASEL, and it has things about circles. It has things about I statements, and basically what it is, and I would have this in my emotion regulation plan. I feel blank when blank happens because blank. All right, so my example is I feel upset when and frustrated when somebody talks behind my back because it hurts my feelings. I never said the word you. I didn't point fingers. I learned how to come from an I statement, because what happens in unhealthy relationships, and this could help all of our relationships. I do this with my husband, and I taught him, honey, you got to do an I statement. I can't hear you. I can't hear those words. You're attacking me. I feel, and honestly, it is a great communication skill. So back to your PBIS matrix, we teach I statements, and I actively use I statements. And then thought traps. Thought traps are critical when you're looking at mental health. So here I had this posted in my room, are 10 of the main thinking traps. Let me just check the time here. Okay, 15 minutes. If you have anxiety, you will most likely have a thought trap of fortune telling. You're predicting the future. You're always thinking the future. You're not in the present. Oh my God, what if I have a panic attack? What if that boy or girl or teacher, what if I have something that's going to happen? They might have a negative filter. It's always going to be bad. And then the shoulds. Oh God, I should have done this. I should have done that. And you get caught in these thought traps. That's why I go back to number one, teaching what these thought traps are, and then giving the regulation skills or reading the gratitude statements or positive affirmations on the board that will help stop your fortune telling. But first you have to be aware that's what you're doing. So when you think of trauma, catastrophizing, the worst scenario is going to happen. Also, dichotomous thinking. Okay, that's a big word for me. I don't even know what it means. All I know is you view things in all or nothing terms. When you have trauma, it hijacks your brain and your brain separates. That's why we do these things. Dichotomous thinking is I'm going to live or I'm going to die. I hate you or I love you. It's all or nothing thinking. And there's no gray area. So we have to actually teach there's more than just living and dying. There's lots of hope in between and a lot of things that we can do. So thinking traps, you might have, this is a trigger for me. So where you check off triggers in your regulation plan, you might say, I do a lot of fortune telling. So I have to catch myself when I'm doing fortune telling and stay in the moment. Okay, this is my favorite slide probably. And I'm just going to share a little bit here, grounding exercises. If nothing else, if we teach nothing else, grounding exercises are a must for mental health. When you're talking about trauma and anxiety, even depression and ADHD, 4-7-8 breathing is research-based. There are a lot of breathing mechanisms that people use. And I'm just going to say that nothing has ever worked for me, had major panic attacks, relied on medication until I found 4-7-8 breathing. And it does something to the sympathetic and the parasympathetic part of your brain with the oxygen and carbon dioxide, and it distracts you. And I go from 0 to 1,000 when I have a panic attack. So there's no, what do? I learned this. And it was the best gift that someone gave me, because I don't need anything anymore other than 4-7-8 breathing. And I do it all the time. And if I'm nervous, Tina, Becky, they all know I can't stand to present. So I'm doing my 4-7-8 breathing. I'm doing my 4-7-8 breathing and staying in the moment. There is, so I was playing meditation music at the beginning. I think it would be wonderful if we walked into every classroom and heard meditation music. It might be to energize in the morning because all your students are falling asleep. It could be calming, but the sound waves, that the alpha and the delta, there's so much research on music. So what research has shown is there's 60 beats or less. So if I go on YouTube and I just do 60 beats or less calming music, it'll pull up a bunch of things. That's what I clicked on, and that's what you came into. That was calming music. I actually was using it for myself because I always get nervous and anxious. So if you do 100 beats or more, this is going to energize. So not only do you have brain breaks, but you have the meditation piece. You have different kinds of music that have been researched and have shown this is going to increase your alpha waves, and your alpha waves calm you down. Your delta waves, they're going to put you to sleep. We probably don't want that in the classroom. This, the brain breaks, I've already done with you. The Jana Marie Foundation, you've all heard about mindfulness. I use the Mindful Schools, but this costs money, and it is it is a whole curriculum from kindergarten to 12th grade. I think you can use some of the kindergarten pieces for pre-K because we don't want to forget that whole population. This gives you all the words to say and the kind of exercise and why you're doing that exercise. So as you're reading the room, or you're doing your check-ins, 3, 2, 1, or they're just sharing one emotion, you can tailor the mindfulness exercise. It is another way of regulating yourself. Okay, sorry, just checking my time. Jana Marie Foundation is in Pennsylvania. She has a free curriculum that goes from 6th grade to 12th grade, and it is lovely. And it gives you meditation music. It gives you like a virtual safe hallway. It gives you apps that you can use. One of the big ones that my kids used to use was Headspace or Calm.com. Or I would have my homework was go home, and with whatever you're struggling, I want you to find an app that's going to help you with your catastrophizing thoughts or your anxiety or your depression. So they would come back and they would show me apps that I had no idea were there. I think if nothing else, that we teach grounding exercises is probably the most important thing, in my opinion. And it takes 1 minute to do a guided meditation. It takes 1 minute to talk through a mindfulness scenario. It takes, as a matter of fact, I'm going to stop and let's do this. Let's do 4-7-8 breathing because I haven't explained it to you. So you're going to breathe in for 4. You're going to hold for 7, and you're going to breathe out for 8. Okay, let's start. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Do it one more time by yourself. Okay. Anybody have any thoughts on that they want to share? Did that resonate with anybody? Beth? Gina?
I use this in my class a lot, something similar to it a lot. And I have a lot of students who are very hyper after lunch, and it helps them just kind of.
Yes, absolutely.
And they go, my body feels weird. Are we going to do that again?
Oh, okay. What does weird mean, Gina?
Calm. I mean, they went from here and they calmed down. So they're like, this is a weird feeling because we're like calm again.
Gina,
Yeah.
thank you for sewing this all up. You're teaching them brains a feeling they have never felt before because they've been so traumatized or so anxious. They're always scanning for danger. There is no calm. So thank you, Gina. She just set this whole thing up. Anybody else? Beth, were you going to say something? Beth Pensbury?
Yeah, well, my own therapist had taught me that strategy and I've used it with my daughter who has anxiety. I guess I'm wondering, is it the breathing or is it the breathing in conjunction with the distraction of counting?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. I think the medical piece, the oxygen, carbon dioxide, that's the scientific piece, but the distraction is there as well.
I always tell them,
Yes, Gina, go ahead.
interject real fast. I always tell my students, you know, we're taught to take deep breaths, but you can't take a deep breath unless you let all the oxygen out of your lungs. So
Mhm.
I always do like baby breath in, bigger breath out. And then I think helps them with that science, the science part of it, the physical part of it.
Yes. And can you imagine doing that every day? Every day we're going to do this and repeat. Remember the stroke. We can change their brains. And so, yes, I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but okay, maybe you just take the breathing back. And several of you have made some fabulous comments. Thank you so much in the chat box. I hope that everybody is reading those. All right, so let me get back to this. And this is why, Tina, I have a hard time with an hour because I like to hear what people are thinking, what they're using, because I think we can all learn from each other. There's no one right way or wrong way. Social problem solving. I don't know if anyone has heard of peace paths, but I think when I've worked with so many high school kids that have no clue how to problem solve other than swear at you, give you the finger, and punch you out. There's no critical thinking going on up here when there is a problem. So a peace path looks like this. Here we go. So I'm going to share this with you and I'm going to move this down. The peace path, and you could have students down here, you can see it. It's hard to read there. It's also, but you can see it here. And they actually have it on the floors of their schools or in their classrooms on a board. Maybe they've used some kids in art class. And here are the steps right here. So the first step is cool off. Then you talk, you listen, you brainstorm, you agree, or you agree to disagree, and then you treat each other with respect. What does that really mean, respect? So I think part of that regulation plan is we're teaching them peace paths. We're going to give them problem solving worksheets. What works for them? This is also letting them empower them to choose what works for them. And we want to give them an arsenal of different things, just like we do in school. You introduce them to all the different types of math and literature. This is the same thing. It's just in the social, emotional, mental health arena. And honestly, I think I'd be a much better person if I had been taught all of these things at a young age. I know I would have. Okay, I do want to play one video, and we're going to wrap it up here pretty soon. Mir K is my hero, and if you've never seen any of his videos, I just think he's brilliant. And while this says empathy, to me, it is perspective taking. And a lot of you guys, when if you're an English teacher, you're teaching point of view. But what I love is that he comes into the room and I realize that this is canned, this video is made up, but it happens. The teacher walks in the room and two kids are arguing. You can write them up or you can do what Mir K does and take it, as a teachable moment. So let me play this for you. And he has other ones as well.
The simple 30 This simple 30-second method reverses memory loss for good. It's so easy you can do it from the comfort of your own home. An award.
Bro, that doesn't even make sense. It makes total sense. You just open up your mind and you listen to other people's opinions.
What's going on here? What's going on?
John's being ridiculous. I'm being ridiculous. You're the one that thinks
Bro,
that.
how can you not see?
Okay, boys, calm down. Okay, everybody take your seats. Matthew, John, come up here, please. And John, stand over there and face that direction. Matthew, come over here and just do the opposite. Thank you. Okay, boys, turn around. And John, what color is the ball?
The ball's white. Seriously? Bro, do you just like making things difficult?
Well, what color do you say the ball is?
Black. The ball is black, clearly. I don't know what you see, Robert, but the ball is white.
Without looking at the ball, I want you to both switch places. Okay, both of you, please turn around. And what color is the ball now? Okay, please have a seat. Throughout our lives, we believe many things, and we hold dear what we think is right and true. But at times there'll be others who disagree with us. What we believe to be 100% right, they believe the opposite just as strongly. Well, how can that be? Can't they see? We can become frustrated, we might grow distant, we may even sever relationships entirely. Slow down. Breathe. Step into the other person's shoes. It'll make all the difference.
Perspective taking is critical to teach, because when you think about those thought traps, you are not thinking about anybody else's perspective, but we have to regulate first and calm ourselves in order to listen to somebody else. And when you're in a flashback or you're in fight, flight, freeze mode, there's no perspective taking going on. So we have to teach this and reteach this and reteach this. This is part of problem solving. And I know that I am almost out of time. I don't have time to play this. This is a great example of a dialogue circle of a teacher. It's easier to do, it's harder to do for high school. You don't have the time, but you can do it with the younger kids. And the way she does the check-in, and it's not long, it's pretty quick, is a great way to start your day and get kids ready and functioning up here in their brains. Real quick, we have a hidden, I'm going off topic here. Depression. Please do not assume that every student we have that is depressed is truly depressed. We have to look at the medical piece. And I only know this because it happened to me and it was horrific. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't stop crying. Something wasn't right. And I went to my doctor and they did blood work and I pretty much didn't have much vitamin D. They started giving me vitamin D, the prescription, and my whole life changed. So I started doing mental health assessments for the SAP teams. And I saw all these kids depressed. So I would ask the parent, have they done any blood work? Is there any vitamin D deficiency? And I kid you not, half of the time the parents were going, oh yeah, I'm taking vitamin D, the prescription. And I went, well, let's get them to the doctor and see what their numbers are. Because maybe it simply is that, and we don't have to do all this other stuff. We just have to look at the medical piece. I really don't have time, I know, to get into the rest of these things. So the last thing I'm going to look at is the PBIS matrix. So everything I have given you doesn't mean you have to change your respect, your responsibility, but maybe we could add a room scan. We're going to use a regulation plan. If I'm offline, I'm going to use one of my grounding skills. For respect, I'm going to learn how to communicate using I statements, perspective taking. Of course, and just like you teach these anyway, you would teach this during your matrix lessons that you do at the beginning of the year. Maybe you revisit them in the middle of the year. And then being responsible to me is not just necessarily having your pencil and all your books and being prepared I'm responsible for them. To me, the responsibility is applying. I'm going to apply the problem solving skills. I'm going to choose to use a worksheet, or maybe I would like to do a piece path, and then social problem solving scenarios. So that is a lot of information in a very brief amount of time.